Hey guys, this is 2.4a and we're going to be writing equations in slope-intercept form. And this is actually a way that helps us understand lines in more detail. So here's your I can statement, is I can use the slope and y-intercept of an equation in slope-intercept form to graph the line. Here's what we're going to do today. We're going to review what this slope-intercept form is, what it means. We're going to review what a y-intercept is, and then we're just going to do two quick examples. Okay, so we've got this equation, and slope-intercept form always takes this this look here, or this form, I should say, and that's why we call it slope-intercept form, is because it's a one way of writing down these equations, where y equals something times x plus a number b. B could be any number, m could be any number. And so in this example that I've written out for us, we have y equals 2x minus 3. And there's some things about this that are really important for you to know. It's important for you to know that this number right in front of the x, this number m, is the slope. So in this particular case, this green number 2 is the slope of this line. That tells us how steep and in what direction this line is going to slope up or down. This number right here on the far right is what we would call b. In this particular case, b is -3, and that tells us where the line is going to intercept the y-axis. Remember this vertical axis over here is called the y-axis, the horizontal flat line is called the x-axis. So what this means is this line is going to intercept this axis at the point 0, -3. Or in other words, we're not going to go left or right at all. We're just going to go straight down to -3. So I know this line is going to intercept at -3 because that's what the y-intercept number b is. And this makes sense because if we think about it like this, you guys remember how to set up these function tables, and I'll set up just like a quick simple one here. If we were to set it up and say, okay, I want x to be equal to 0, what would y be equal to? Well, if you put 0 in the place of x here, 2 times 0 is 0 minus 3, so you're just left with a -3. And that's how we get the point 0, -3. That tells us where it's going to intercept the y-axis. Then from that point, we don't really necessarily have to do any more points in our function table. I'm kind of showing you a new way to graph now. You can simply use a slope. Remember, the slope means rise over run, and if our slope is 2, we can write it as a fraction. 2 equals 2 over 1. So our rise is 2, and our run is 1. So I can use that information to go from the y-intercept and make another point. I'm going to rise 2, go over 1. Rise 2, go over 1. And I can consistently do this to quickly graph a line. And then if I could draw a straight line, which I still can't draw a very nice straight line, I could connect these and we'd be done. We've got our line graphed. And so it's really that simple. So let's do two more quick examples and we'll be done here. Alright, so in this particular case, all I'm asking you to do is says use the given information to write an equation that is in slope-intercept form. So remember, this is the form of slope-intercept. I've told you what the slope is, I've told you what the y-intercept is, so all you have to do is plug in those numbers. This here is m, and this here is b. So your equation or your answer would simply be y equals 1/2 m, and you could write plus a -1, or you could write y equals 1/2 m minus 1. This right here and this right here mean the same thing. A plus and a negative is the same thing as a subtraction. So that's all you've got to do. You've got to simply take the slope, put it in the place of m, take the y-intercept, put it in the place of b. Those types of problems that you're going to be asked to do are quite easy. It's like playing matchups. But then I am going to ask you to do stuff like this, and there's a lot of directions here, but it's really just like what we did in the first example. It says for the equation, write the slope and the coordinate of the y-intercept. Okay, let's start with that, just that part. It wants us to write the slope, and it wants us to write the y-intercept. Remember, this is what slope-intercept form looks like, and so the slope is whatever m is. In this case, there's no number being multiplied by x that I can see, so that means that m, or the slope, must be 1, because 1 times x is just x. Don't get confused and think it's 0, because if it was 0 there wouldn't be an x, because anything times 0 is 0. The y-intercept is pretty easy. That's just 4. Okay, so I've done the first part. I've written the slope. Oh, and it says, and the coordinate of the y-intercept. Okay, so that's important to know. If the intercept is, if that number's 4, then the coordinate would simply be 0, 4, because we know that x has to be 0 for y to equal 4. Then graph the y-intercept and use the slope to graph an additional 2 points. Connect the 3 points using a ruler. Okay, so we'll go to the next slide to do this. So our y-intercept here was 4. We've determined that. So I'm going to graph this at 0, 4, right? Because when x is 0, y is 4. And then I'm just going to use a slope. And the slope is 1. And 1 can be written as 1 over 1 or 1 rise over 1 run. And it's positive. So that means I want to make sure it slopes up. So I'm going to go up 1 over 1, up 1 over 1, up 1 over 1, up 1 over 1. And I could do that consistently and connect them with the straight line, and I'm done. That's all there is to it, guys. This way of graphing is actually, I think, a lot faster than setting up that old function table. Remember how you, whoops, I can't seem to draw very well, but you'd set up this and you plug in x numbers and get your y numbers and you graph them, and then there was like, oh, I hope I didn't make a mistake in the math because it should be a straight line, but for some reason it doesn't look like a straight line. Well, this is actually an easier way to graph lines. You simply mark the y-intercept and then use a slope to create other points on the graph. Good luck to you. I think you're going to do well in this assignment.